As today's last speaker, I'd like to introduce Candace Myers, who is a leader in design operations, currently at Netflix, formerly at Facebook and Pinterest. You heard those right. Working across brand and product, she specializes in taking operations from 0 to 1 on UX teams, and is particularly interested in operational innovation and unlocking collaboration on teams. She also writes about operational strategy on her Medium blog. So please, a round of applause for Candace.
Hello, Amuse Conference. It's so lovely to be here. Thank you for joining me. This is my first time in Budapest, and I love it. It's so beautiful. So, Szia Budapest. Okay, I'm Candace Myers, and today I'm going to talk to you about the application and archetypes of design operations. So application is going to focus on how you can really fit design operations in a practical way on your team. And then archetypes is going to discuss more broadly the way design operations professionals are sort of built and some of the talent profiles of design operations. So has anyone here ever actually worked with a DPM or a producer? One? Oh, great. Well, this will be a fresh crowd then. So the path to design operations is usually not very straightforward. So I'm going to start by telling you about how I got into design ops. So I've been working in design ops since about 2012. I graduated from law school and started working with creatives and designers. I was working on contracts, intellectual property, business development, those types of things, and pretty much hated it. It was very miserable. Because all I really wanted to do was work with artists and creatives like yourselves. I did not want to work with other attorneys or judges, and I didn't want to work for the Copyright and Trademark Office for the rest of my life. So, no offense to my attorney cohorts, but I just had fun with creatives, and I still do. So with a ton of luck, I was able to pivot my career into design operations. So that was in 2012, and I've never really looked back since then. So I started my career in operations at Pinterest, where I led operations for the brand team, think like advertising, photo shoots, and we focused there on how to leverage our brand affinity to really drive engagement with the product. Then I pivoted to lead our innovation and invention team, and I will tell you more about that later. In 2018, I moved to Meta, Facebook at the time, and I worked there for almost 4 years, working with hundreds, literally, of product designers, and we were focused on horizontal collaboration, east-west collaboration, and design operations. I worked on the communities team, so if you've ever used a Facebook group or made a Facebook event, that was our team. And our mission there was really to connect people with their outside of their social graph, so not your friends and family, but really to your interest graph, right? The people you might not meet, but for the fact that, let's say you both love the same trashy reality show. Now I'm at Netflix. So today I am newly the design operations lead for our organic growth ads platform and multi-household usage, which is really like the future of Netflix. Until recently, I was leading the studio product team, which creates all of the products that create the shows you love to watch. But my archetype, which I'll tell you more about, was the ideal fit for really a growth role. And so they moved me over to growth, and I'm very excited to be working on the future. So now that you have a brief understanding of what I've done, where I'm coming from, I want to tell you more about the discipline. So if you take nothing more away from the 20 or so minutes of this talk, it's really one thing. If you are in the business of design, then you are in the business of design operations. Regardless of the simplicity of your product or the strength of your design team, there's really no way around it. So at its core, design operations are really building a rhythm on a team. That's what we do. We are like a metronome for your team, The ebbs and flows of the design and product development process are very organic and maybe a little bit chaotic. So design operations is building repeatable, practical, and scalable sense of, what would we say, consistency and predictability on your team. So let's talk about what it looks like in practical terms. So the operational overhead, meaning the day-to-day stuff of any design team, no matter how big or small, is going to be taken on by some human somewhere on the team. So if your designers are the ones who are taking on the operational overhead, then they're probably not focusing on their core strengths, right? Which is really ensuring collaboration with product to ship products that people love to use and further the mission and vision of your company. So I have been asked many times in my career, isn't the operational overhead, isn't that the job of the design manager or design leadership? So I would argue that, well, I'm going to go more in depth in this in a moment, but driving the operational overhead of a team when design leadership is doing this, it really is taking them away from their core function, right? Which is growing the people of the team, finding the ambition of the team, and furthering the mission of the team. So design operations really focuses on the problems that are core to a designer's day-to-day work. So it might be said that we solve the problems that of the designers who are solving the problems of the product. All right. The only difference between a team that has invested in design operations and a team that hasn't is who is doing the actual operations of design on your team. So who is performing the actions that is enabling your team to scale a culture of craft, practice, and excellence. All right, so let's dig into some examples of how the teams that I have led and some of the things I've done in my career in terms of how design operations can help unlock your team or you. So this is a super, super basic funnel going from broad to targeted. It's a basic design process for any team, right? You're going to have an identify the problem phase. You're going to have some sort of discovery and understand phase. This is the phase where you're doing some basic research, probably working cross-functionally to align with metrics, technical considerations, those types of things. Then you're going to do some ideating and testing. You'll probably work with user research, probably make a prototype or something. And then from there, you're going to execute and build, so hand off those specs to engineering. And then finally, polish and launch, or depending on what company you work at, it might be launch, then polish. Just depends. Okay, so here's the same basic funnel, but this is what it looks like on the bottom side with operational support. So what an operations professional can do for you is they can coordinate and facilitate those sprints and identify the problem moments. Research ops and knowledge management can help you coordinate your research and hold on to it for longer so that you can scale it. Design systems and enablement are going to help you scale your designs and create coherent, repeatable systems. They can help you with timeline and capacity management, basic project management, and then, of course, they can help you with launch, establishing launch checklists, dog fooding, ensuring that the polish that you really want is there. So let's look at that again. Oops. So this is without design ops, and this is with design ops. So the idea here is that someone on the bottom side of this is really doing all of this work. It's not like this work isn't happening. The question is are you doing it? Is your design team doing it? Or is somebody who is really knowledgeable and trained in the craft of design operations doing it? All right, so I want to take you through my first case study. So this is really about how we can leverage design operations to boost the understand phase of your work, right? That's that top of the funnel, the big part of the funnel. So let's talk design sprints. So the problem we were solving at Pinterest was one of team culture. We actually did not have a strong practice of design sprints at Pinterest. So this was leading us to a place where the team did not have a strong grasp of or practical understanding of how to innovate on the product itself or how to run basic design sprints. So my mentor on the left there, August de los Reyes, he approached me in 2015. He was our head of design at the time, and he asked me to create a workshop for invention and innovation. So the idea was that we would put one design operations person, me, and to really build and create this program that would enable teams to really easily run sprints and innovation work, and do so without weeks and weeks of overhead and all the pressure of like making a sprint happen, right? We were fortunate enough to work directly with Jake Knapp, who wrote the Google Sprint formula and the sprint book itself, and we consulted with him on the program. So we leveraged a small amount of like my time to create the mechanisms and channels and frankly the space to innovate and work on the design. So the first thing we did was really like build a very basic sprint brief template, right? Nobody likes going to a blank page. So all we did was create a standard sprint brief for every team to use. What this did was that it actually helped folks understand what a good brief looks like and made them understand what a rigorous design sprint required up front. Secondly, and this one sounds really basic, but we found a dedicated space. A lot of these issues, especially in cities, just comes down to space. We don't have a war room to sit in, so we were able to sell through a dedicated sprint space just for the teams to work in. And then finally, we created accountability and rigor on the back end by ensuring that anyone who had done a sprint, like these lovely folks up here, had to share their process, share their artifacts and outcomes, no matter the fidelity or how much they, quote unquote, believed in the work afterward. So the value we unlocked with one design ops person was actually huge. So with design ops running an innovation lab, none of you had to run sprints alone or take on all of the effort alone. We had a ton of teams who were in the sprint lab for the year or so that I was running it. The innovation workshop fostered our first multi-million-dollar What If campaign that you can see there in Times Square of New York, called the What If campaign. We also innovated on Pinterest for Business. We created new data profiles, data visualization for creators, and it was so slick that it made Adweek. And then finally, one of my favorite product innovations is this idea of the long press and being able to save from the Pinterest home feed. So in the middle here, you can see the most old school, like rudimentary, what it used to look like when we first did it in 2017-ish. And you can see here what it looks like today. It's a very beautiful, slick, and really simple flow to use. All right, I'm going to move on to my second case study, which is about Meta, and it is about supercharging your design system. So now that you've seen where design operations can fit in at the top of the funnel, let's talk about that area toward the bottom of the funnel. So scale and design systems. So in this one, it's really about how we leverage design operations to create a design system for our very specific products at Facebook. So the problem we were trying to solve is really one of velocity and quality. So our mission really was to develop a system for creating design components to scale engineers while maintaining integrity and quality of the product. This is the former head of the Facebook app. She's now CEO of DoorDash. Her name is Fiji Simo. And she was up on stage in front of, I don't know, maybe 1 million or so people talking about community products and the future of Facebook. So how our team was the future of Facebook. So our team was definitely in the hot seat, and moving fast and breaking things was certainly not an option. Well, we had to move fast. We couldn't break anything. So the problem was that what we were trying to solve was trying to bring together multiple disparate and different products into the same community design system language. So the first thing we did, other than recruit a badass designer, was get a design operations lead dedicated to the work. So on this flow, The middle squares are sort of what design is doing, and then those meta lines there is what design operations is running, okay? So the first opportunity we had, we worked with the human interface guidelines at Facebook, or called HIG. So this team also had design operations on it, and they were able to help us create our own system that was complementary to theirs. So with design operations on that team, they already had a template for a design system that we could really use and leverage to drive our complementary system. Secondly, there's a war room. So we had a mega sprint, what we used to call worms back in the day, to ideate on the system across many teams. This would include Facebook Marketplace, Facebook Lives, gaming on Facebook. So our strong sprint culture, built in concert with design operations with strong sprint understanding, meant that we really already had the tools to make a great sprint happen with very little notice. So third here is the designers are working diligently on documentation, principles. They're really doing the business of working on what the design system looks like and why. So in concert with that, design operations was working really closely, cross-functionally with our data science team, our product management team, to ensure that we were incorporating things like experiment reviews and testing into the work. We also worked with research operations and coordinated all of our user testing. We also coordinated all of the touch points with leadership themselves, right? So our VP, who you saw earlier, Fiji, she wanted to know what our progress was when we were going to be done. The designers didn't have to worry about any of that. We were coordinating those strategic touch points. So no designers had to worry about any logistical aspect of the work. So once the system was ready for launch, the designers already had an existing Figma library and production designer that they could lean on to create the sticker sheets and really put the system into the library, right? So design operations on the team, we had already created a Figma hygiene program and a series of basically elements that were required in order to inject design systems into Figma. And no designer had to worry about making up a system of documentation across literally 500 designers. That was all done by design operations on the front end. So here is what is probably around a 2009-ish version, 2019-ish. I'm sure your Facebook looks nothing like this now, but you can see we created a system for the buttons. All the join and edit buttons are quite large. We had aligned all of the metadata on the top of the posts, and without design operations, the designers would have had to do all of this stuff themselves. So not only would they have to accommodate the overhead of testing, research, check-ins with VPs, that type of thing, but they would have also had to create their own Figma library system. And again, this was across nearly 500 designers. So this was a huge win for design operations as well as collaboration. So let's move away from the anecdotes and talk about where design operations actually fits in. So I did touch on this earlier. We have design managers, right? Design managers are driving, if a design manager is driving all the operational overhead of a team, it can sort of take away from some of their core functions, which I have here. Now again, this is just my perspective and my opinions given my experience, but really, the core work of a design manager is driving ambition, innovation, unlocking the team, the human potential of the team. I think the speaker before me was a great example of that. So you can see where here the core operations of design operations really lie in relation to the core operations of design managers, right? So we fit into practice, process, knowledge management, rigor, tooling, resourcing, all of those types of things. So the relationship between design operations and design leadership is actually a very special and complementary relationship. So the reason it's so complementary is that both functions exist not only as leaders on the team or somebody who has a tree-line view of what's happening on the team, but also as patrons of the team itself. They work in service of the team. So design operations and design leadership partners can unlock communication channels, mission and vision enablement. They can ensure the team is moving quickly, obviously at quality. And of course, they can help connect the business outcomes to the roadmap. Okay, so by now I hope you're at least a little bit sold on what it looks like to have a design operations team and how to build one yourself. So this cute cartoon is actually one of my favorite things of all time. So like all disciplines that are new to an organization, building a design operations team is a very iterative approach. So you start at a more rudimentary sort of vision until ultimately the discipline catches up to the ambition of what you want, right? Go a little bit faster every time. Okay, so now that you have had a little introduction into what design operations sort of is as a function, I want to introduce you to the archetypes that are present in design operations. And I want to do it using probably the most iconic archetypal story of all time, Star Wars. So this little Star Wars portion is probably an entire talk in and of itself. There's tons of nuance to these roles and to the craft and discipline, but think of this as a quick introduction and not entirely exhaustive. So this is Luke Skywalker. He is a visionary. So you can give him any large opportunity or problem, and he will deliver a compelling and highly creative strategic vision. His superpower is that he is as creative as he is generative and operationally strategic. So he is optimally suited to solve problems of both form and function. Hire Luke if you need to align complex and disparate work streams or functions and, let's say, rally an army to a cause. This is Princess Leia. She is our chief of staff. So she is the first person you go to with a problem spanning either people, process, or product spaces, or maybe all three. Her superpower is leveraging operational knowledge. She's a diplomat. So she has internal and external to the company relationships, and she can mobilize operational solutions at scale. So Leia always has her finger on the pulse of the team culture, and she has highly leverageable relationships. So hire Leia if you need to set big programs into motion. She is a princess. She has a lot of connections. All right, let's talk about our tech and tooling experts, R2-D2 and C-3PO. So these robots, they're actually people, but we'll call them robots, are schooled in the cutting edge of industry, tooling, and technology operations. So they know how to maximize team impact via tooling, automation, integration, including things like no-code, design tools, project management tools, integration, all of those types of things. Their superpower is leveraging tech to scale the humans. They use automation to create efficiencies and reduce human operational load. You want to hire them if you don't have a lot of headcount and you need maybe multipliers of humans and technical innovators. And this is Chewbacca. He's our creative producer. So he understands the creative process, and he can manage a high volume and variety of things coming at him all at warp speed. So his superpower is creating a track for shipping creative and keeping the ship sort of running on time and in motion. So you want to hire Chewie if you have a chaotic creative pipeline that needs innovation and order. He keeps Han Solo in check, and he can do the same for your team. He is also a co-pilot who can take the wheel should something happen. All right, so with this cast of characters, you can take your UX team from Baby Yoda to Yoda Yoda. So I want to be clear, both are very special and precious, but one is much wiser and more effective than the other one. So from Baby Yoda to Yoda Yoda. All right, here's where there's a moment of caution here. Just like the Death Star, beware of the single point of failure. So in the case of the Death Star, it was a single exhaust port, which was the point of weakness. that was exploited by the resistance to blow up the entire ship. So in 10 years of building and running design operations team, this is the most common issue that I see with design operations. Do not let this happen to you. Make sure that your design operations humans are scaling. They're creating systems that everyone contributes to and that everyone can leverage. Do not let them be your single point of failure. All right, after you've built your design operations team, what happens then? So there are so many flavors of design operations. Once you have established whatever your flavor is, you can branch out into more specialty or sort of like niche roles: learning and development, design equity and inclusion, content strategy. I've also added a couple roles here that are not like technically specialized, which is research ops and hardware ops. I just felt like I really wanted to give them a shout out because they're amazing multipliers of teams. So a quick reminder of the one thing that I hope you take away from this talk is that if you're in the business of design, you're in the business of design operations. So whether you decide to hire or build a design operations team or leverage leadership and individual contributors to really hold on to drive that overhead, don't forget that the work of design operations is baked into the work of any design team. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your talk. Now, if we can, let's have some time for some questions.
Sure.
So there are a few here. One's asking about how long was a design sprint at Pinterest?
Oh, great question. So a sprint would be anywhere from 5 days at the shortest to 3 weeks, which was about the longest. And it was less about how long it was and more about how many people were involved. We always followed the Bezos 2-pizza rule, which was if you can feed everyone in the room with 2 pizzas, you have too many people in the room. So roll it back.
Oh, wow. That's a great way to remember that.
Yeah.
So the next one, what's the difference between an agile lean project manager and design ops manager?
Oh, great question. So it depends. It depends on the company, and it depends on the work of the design ops team itself. So where like agile and lean project managers really lean in more at places like Facebook or Netflix is on the product side. So they're really more like either TPMs or product operations managers. So they're really like more like Scrum managers. And then on the design operations side, we're really carrying the overhead of what it looks like to have a design operations team, everything from like how we brief work in, how we collaborate with our partners, to like team culture, team health, and design excellence.
Great, thank you. When is the moment to create a design ops in a company that is growing up? With less than 5 designers in a company, is it necessary?
Great question. So this one's actually, I feel pretty strongly about. It is never too early or too late to have design operations on your team. Remember, they are some of the least expensive people you can ever employ. They certainly make quite a lot less than designers and PMs and engineers. So I would say if you have a super young team, get design ops in on the ground floor. If you have a super mature team and your product's been around for 15, 20 years and you have product market fit, get design ops in. I guarantee it will improve your team.
I think that also answers a different question that kind of asks the same. What's the resource ratio between designers, researchers, and design ops professionals at Meta or Netflix?
Great question. So I think we're probably about 1 to 12, one design ops person for every 12 product designers. And that is exclusive of leadership, give or take. Research, I can't speak to research because I don't really know. It's probably about 1 to 10 or 12 as well in terms of researchers. We are more on par with, design ops professionals are more on par with researchers and content design headcount, probably less than designers.
And I guess this one is a bit more personal. Why did you leave Meta?
Wow, you guys. I mean, I left Meta for a couple reasons. One, I I was a little bit, how do you say, disenchanted with the direction the company was headed in. And two, I got an amazing call from Netflix. And when Netflix calls, you pick up the phone.
I guess so. Sorry. How can we apply design ops best practices built for hundreds of designers for smaller designer groups like 5 to 20 without the need to dedicate a member?
Oh, interesting. So design ops best practices can apply to 3 designers or 3,000 designers. A good design ops person, like a really good one, not like a Death Star one, like a good one, is creating a scalable, extensible system that can really be scaled to, I mean, think of like it as a chair, right? You can have one chair that one person can sit on, and then you can duplicate the chair 1,000,000 times and have a stadium of 1,000,000 people. So what design ops should do should meet form, function, utility, and something that any designer can really leverage.
Thanks. How did you maintain, update the Facebook design system after its creation?
Oh, great question. So these design systems, as I'm sure you all know, they get outdated pretty fast. So we were lucky enough on our team, it was quite a large team, that once we had established the internal design system for that particular product group, we sort of established that group as a team, which became the core team. So the core team was like a group of PMs, designers, and engineers who are sort of like accountable for keeping that system alive and going and updating it, as well as working collaboratively and cross-functionally with our HIG team and the other core teams.
There's one that's kind of funny, but upvoted very much, so I'm going to ask it. What's Mark like?
Okay, so I only ever really saw Mark one time in 4 years. He's not as tall as you think, stands very straight, and he has a gigantic bodyguard following him at all times.
Good to know. Let me pick up another one. What is your piece of advice to keep our Figma tidy and up-to-date, transparent?
Ooh, it's a great question. So you need to have principles and templates to start, right? Because everyone just jumps in and they're like, designing, it's crazy, they gotta meet deadlines, it's all nuts. So if you can leverage someone on your team to have sort of like a template and a principle that everyone is like, then principles that everyone's following, it makes it so much easier. It is a little bit of the like slow down to go faster, and you do have to continue to iterate on the templates, but ultimately, hopefully there's someone on your team who will help take on the burden of just like making those templates happen, and then everybody should just be able to use them, you know, like just coloring book.
Do you have dedicated agile management? And if yes, do their activity and design ops interfere?
We do not. So at Netflix, we do not have agile management because it's just not the type of company that that Netflix is. But I would say that if anything, we have a really great relationship with our product ops and our technical product managers, our TPMs, in the sense that we can sort of pass the baton to them, give them highlights, let them know what's coming. They can, you know, send things back over the fence. And so if anything, it's just like communicators and hubs communicating with each other in separate spaces.
I guess this is a longer one. I'll try. There's lots of operational topics relevant for both design and research. Design ops as a name can be misleading, focusing on design without research. What do you think?
Oh, wait, can you repeat that? Which one was that?
Hopefully it
Operation
bumped
for
up to
both
the top.
design and research. Design ops as a name can be misleading. Oh, yes. So my understanding, and UXR ops, user research ops, has been around longer than design ops, as you can imagine, because it's really hard and it takes a lot of overhead to go external to your company, find people who are going to talk to you, get them in the door or whatever on the app, and have them do the thing that you want them to do. So I would say that research ops is its own super special sort of like area and discipline, and design ops is very different from that. And so I would say that design ops really does focus on design, and it's just a much larger, like, I don't know, umbrella for like producers and DPMs, like those types of people. Research ops really is a completely separate space. There's a lot of overlap in the function in terms of like how you would approach problem solving and how you support the team, but ultimately very, very different.
Thank you. What is the benefit to outsource these tasks from the design team to the ops team? Or what is the key benefit, I guess?
Oh, interesting. Well, if you would like more time heads down thinking about user problems and flows, then that would be the benefit of maybe outsourcing some other things, like thinking through logistical issues, thinking through knowledge management, thinking through managing leadership, reviews, those types of things, phasing of projects. Those are the types of things that a design ops person would do that would take it off the back of the designer. But I would say, like, there's not a day that goes by that I don't talk to a design director, a design IC, somebody in design, because ultimately it's partnership.
I guess there's two more questions. One got upvoted again, so I'm going to ask it. What is your favorite Netflix series?
You guys, you don't want to know. All right. It's Selling Sunset. I know. I'm trash. It's fine.
Okay, let's do one more. What kind of tools are you using to version control, I guess, design work?
Great question. Well, I hope by now, theoretically, everyone has moved to designing in the cloud. So Figma would be the primary tool that we're using to version design work. But then within Figma, as I noted before in the design systems work, there is so much to be done. Like, Figma doesn't necessarily make it super easy to have retrievable work, understand what is shipped, what is spec'd, what is not, what's experimental and what's in production. And so that is something that each team, I think, has to just really invest in and make part of the legacy of having a really great design team.
Thank you very much for all your answers.